He has been tracking the skies over the Persian Gulf for more than 15 years. And what just happened in the airspace east of the Strait of Hormuz is something he never expected to witness in his lifetime. Something is unfolding inside Iran's air defense network that no one predicted. Not the analysts at the Pentagon, not the intelligence officers in Tel Aviv, not even the Revolutionary Guard commanders who built the system they believed could not be penetrated. The sanctions pressure was expected. The naval buildup near Bahrain was expected. The diplomatic ultimatums from Washington were expected. But what just happened in the corridor between Qatar, Oman, and the southern edge of Iranian airspace was never supposed to be possible. American strategic bombers, the largest and most lethal aircraft in the United States Air Force inventory, flew directly through Iran's strategic backyard, and the regime in Tehran did not detect the approach until the formation was already past the point of no return. According to defense officials cited by Reuters in the past 72 hours, the Islamic Republic has now placed its entire integrated air defense system on the highest alert posture it has maintained since the 2020 assassination of Qasem Soleimani. Multiple sources inside the Iranian military establishment confirm that radar operators from Bandar Abbas to Bushehr have been ordered to remain at combat stations indefinitely. Subscribe to this channel right now and hit the subscribe button. Turn on notifications immediately. What unfolds in the coming 72 hours inside Iran will change everything observers thought they understood about the balance of power in the Middle East. In the next few minutes, the full picture will emerge of exactly how American B-2 Spirit and B-52 Stratofortress bombers quietly executed one of the most calculated demonstrations of force projection in the modern history of the Persian Gulf. Why Iranian air defense commanders are now in a state of barely controlled panic, and what this single flight reveals about a much larger operation that Washington has been preparing for months. This is not speculation. This is documented reality, assembled from open-source flight tracking data, official statements, and reporting from established defense publications. To understand why this moment is so historically significant, the analysis must first go back to the early 1980s. For over 4 decades, the Islamic Republic of Iran built its entire defense doctrine on one unbreakable promise to its population and its proxies across the region. That promise was strategic depth. The regime in Tehran assured its citizens, its Revolutionary Guard commanders, and its allied militias from Beirut to Sana'a that the Iranian homeland itself would remain untouchable, protected by a layered air defense network that combined Russian-supplied S-300 systems, domestically produced Bavar 373 batteries, Khordad 15 medium-range interceptors, and a dense web of early warning radar installations stretching across the Zagros Mountains. For decades, every sanction, every covert operation, every assassination of a nuclear scientist on Iranian soil was absorbed by the regime and repackaged as proof that the Islamic Republic could weather any storm because its core territory remained sovereign and defended. The Bavar 373 system, unveiled in 2019, was paraded through Tehran as evidence that Iran had achieved indigenous air defense capability rivaling the Russian S-400. According to statements from Iranian Defense Minister Aziz Nasirzadeh, cited by Iran International, the integrated network was designed specifically to detect and engage stealth aircraft at extended ranges, a direct response to American and Israeli capabilities. That entire doctrine, that entire 40-year-old promise of strategic depth, just collided with reality in a way that cannot be undone. The flight path that emerged through open-source aviation trackers and was subsequently confirmed by United States Central Command revealed that American bombers operating out of Diego Garcia and forward staging positions transited through international airspace immediately adjacent to Iranian sovereign territory, conducted what defense analysts at the Center for Strategic and International Studies describe as a calibrated presence operation, and returned to base without a single Iranian interceptor being scrambled in time to establish visual or radar lock during the most critical phase of the transit. This is not a minor embarrassment for the Islamic Republic. This is a structural turning point in the perception of Iranian deterrence, and the consequences are already cascading through the regime's decision-making apparatus in ways that will become impossible to contain. The first war Iran is now fighting is the war against its own air defense credibility. For years, the Revolutionary Guard Aerospace Command, led by Brigadier General Amir Ali Hajizadeh, has insisted publicly that no foreign aircraft could approach Iranian airspace without detection and engagement. Statements from Hajizadeh, cited by Tasnim news agency over the past 3 years, repeatedly emphasized that the integrated network covered every approach vector from the Gulf, the Sea of Oman, and the western frontier. Those claims have now been tested under operational conditions, and the results are devastating for the regime's narrative. According to assessments from Jane's Defense Weekly published in the past month, the American formation employed a combination of electronic warfare support from EA-18G Growler aircraft, refueling support from KC-46 Pegasus tankers operating out of Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, and routing decisions that exploited the gaps in Iranian radar coverage created by the terrain shadow of the Musandam Peninsula. The operation was surgical in its planning, calculated in its execution, and masterful in its political signaling. Every element was designed to communicate one message to Tehran without firing a single shot. The message was simple. The United States can place strategic bombers within strike range of every critical Iranian target whenever it chooses, and the regime will not see them coming until the weapons are already in flight. Inside the Iranian Air Defense Command structure, the response has been chaotic. Multiple reports from regional sources, including detailed analysis published by the Atlantic Council in recent weeks, indicate that the regime has now ordered emergency review of all radar deployment patterns, accelerated the requested delivery of additional Russian air defense components that Moscow has been slow to provide due to its own commitments in Ukraine, and initiated what amounts to a full operational audit of every air defense battery from Tabriz to Chabahar. Iranian state television, in coverage observed over the past week, has notably avoided any direct discussion of the bomber transit, focusing instead on domestic ceremonies and economic announcements. That silence itself is evidence of the panic the regime is experiencing. The second war Iran is now fighting is the war over its nuclear program timeline. This is where the strategic implications become genuinely dangerous. For over 20 years, the calculation underlying Iran's nuclear policy has rested on a specific assumption. That assumption was that any American or Israeli military action against the Fordow enrichment facility, the Natanz complex, or the heavy water reactor at Iraq would face credible air defense opposition that would either prevent successful strikes or impose costs high enough to deter the operation entirely. That assumption is now in collapse. According to reporting from the Wall Street Journal in the past several weeks, citing senior administration officials, the bomber transit was specifically designed to demonstrate that the air corridors required to deliver the GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator, the 30,000-pound bunker buster designed specifically to defeat hardened underground facilities like Fordow, are now operationally available to American planners. The B-2 Spirit is the only aircraft in the world certified to carry and deliver the GBU-57. The fact that B-2 bombers transited within unrefueled strike range of Fordow without detection is not a coincidence. It is a deliberate, calibrated message. David Albright, president of the Institute for Science and International Security, in analysis published this month, assessed that Iran's uranium enrichment to 60% purity has now produced a stockpile sufficient for multiple weapons should the regime decide to proceed to weaponization. The International Atomic Energy Agency, in its most recent quarterly report cited by Reuters, documented that Iranian-declared stockpiles of highly enriched uranium have continued to grow despite ongoing diplomatic engagement. The combination of an expanding Iranian nuclear stockpile and a demonstrated American capability to strike Iranian nuclear facilities without effective opposition creates the most dangerous strategic intersection the region has seen since the 1981 Israeli strike on the Osirak reactor. The third war Iran is now fighting is the war over its proxy network's confidence. This dimension of the crisis receives less attention than the nuclear question, but it may ultimately prove more consequential for the regime's survival. For decades, the Islamic Republic has maintained influence across the Middle East, not through direct military power, but through a network of proxies that includes Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, Shia militia coalitions in Iraq, and remnants of Bashar al-Assad's intelligence networks scattered across Syria. That entire proxy network operates on a foundational belief. The belief is that Tehran, the patron and paymaster, possesses sufficient strategic depth to absorb retaliation and continue supporting its clients. When that belief erodes, the proxies begin recalculating their own positions. According to analysis from the Washington Institute for Near East Policy published this month, multiple indicators suggest this recalculation is already underway. Hezbollah, severely degraded by Israeli operations in Lebanon over the past 18 months, has reportedly reduced its operational tempo and is conserving remaining capabilities rather than launching new attacks. The Houthi leadership in Sana'a, while continuing its missile and drone campaigns, has notably moderated the targeting of American naval assets following the bomber demonstration. Iraqi Shia militias have substantially reduced rocket and drone attacks on American positions in Iraq and Syria over the past several weeks. Each of these adjustments represents proxy commanders making independent assessments that Iranian protection may no longer be reliable. When proxies begin protecting themselves rather than executing Iranian directives, the entire forward defense strategy that has defined Iranian regional policy for 40 years begins to unravel. The regime in Tehran is now facing the possibility that the network it spent decades building and billions of dollars sustaining may simply stop responding to its commands at the precise moment it needs that network most. The fourth war Iran is now fighting is the war inside its own political and military leadership. Reports emerging from credible regional sources, including detailed reporting from Iran International and Radio Farda over the past several weeks, indicate that the bomber transit has triggered intense internal disputes within the Iranian leadership about how to respond. The supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, now in his mid-80s and reportedly in declining health, faces competing pressures from different factions. The hardline faction within the Revolutionary Guard, associated with commanders who prioritize ideological purity over strategic calculation, is reportedly pushing for an immediate demonstration of Iranian capability, including potential strikes against American assets in the region or against shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. The pragmatist faction, associated with President Masoud Pezeshkian and elements of the foreign ministry, is reportedly arguing for diplomatic de-escalation and renewed nuclear negotiations to prevent a catastrophic confrontation. The military professionals within the regular Iranian armed forces, distinct from the Revolutionary Guard, are reportedly emphasizing the operational reality that Iran cannot win a direct military confrontation with the United States and must focus on preserving remaining capabilities. This factional dispute is not academic. Every day that passes without a unified Iranian response signals to Washington and Tel Aviv that the regime is paralyzed at the moment when decisive action would be required. That paralysis itself becomes an invitation for further pressure, creating a feedback loop that makes the situation increasingly dangerous with each passing hour. This perfect storm of demonstrated air defense failure, accelerating nuclear timeline pressure, fracturing proxy network reliability, and internal regime paralysis has created something far more dangerous than any single crisis the Islamic Republic has faced in its 46-year history. These are not separate issues. They feed into each other in compounding ways. The air defense failure accelerates the nuclear timeline pressure because Washington now has demonstrated strike capability. The nuclear timeline pressure fractures the proxy network because clients recognize their patron may be approaching a confrontation it cannot win. The proxy fracturing deepens the internal regime paralysis because hardliners and pragmatists draw opposite conclusions from the same evidence. And the internal paralysis prevents any coherent response to the air defense failure, completing the cycle. At the center of this convergence sits Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who has been largely invisible in public appearances for the past 3 weeks, according to monitoring by regional analysts. This is the reality of Iranian strategic position in 2026. Not one crisis, but four overlapping wars destroying the regime's foundational doctrine from every direction simultaneously. According to credible reporting from defense publications and regional sources, the regime now has only a 10 to 15-day window before the convergence reaches a critical threshold. The Iranian fiscal year requires emergency budget allocations for accelerated air defense procurement that must be processed by the end of this month. The International Atomic Energy Agency Board of Governors meets in approximately 2 weeks to consider new resolutions on Iranian nuclear compliance, resolutions that could trigger automatic snapback of United Nations sanctions. The Israeli political leadership is reportedly preparing operational options that require decisions within a similar timeframe. Every single day the convergence continues. The Islamic Republic is not only losing current strategic position, it is permanently destroying future strategic options. The countdown has begun. The clock is ticking. The structural damage to Iranian deterrence is irreversible. And the question is no longer whether the regime will face a moment of strategic reckoning, but whether that reckoning arrives through controlled diplomatic process or through uncontrolled military escalation. Subscribe to this channel right now and turn on notifications immediately. Coverage will continue tracking every major development in this rapidly evolving crisis as it unfolds, with detailed analysis of every flight pattern, every diplomatic statement, every internal regime fracture, and every proxy adjustment that signals where this situation moves next. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think the Islamic Republic will choose diplomatic de-escalation and accept reduced nuclear capability to preserve regime survival? Or will the hardline faction prevail and push toward direct confrontation with American forces in the region? Every comment is read, and every perspective informs the ongoing analysis. Thank you for watching. Stay informed, stay ahead of the curve, and the next briefing will continue tracking this developing situation as it accelerates toward its inflection point.